But without further ado, I would like to introduce the best looking person in the room up the front to share a word for us.
Thanks so much. Good afternoon, good evening actually. Bear with me 1 second. I was trying to get this up while Deb was speaking, but I was trying to listen as well. Okay, I'm very excited to be with you all. I'm laughing because last time I spoke, not at Gap, but at Eternity, I prepared a message and I didn't realize that it was so long, but I knew that it was good content, so I wanted to get through it all. So I was talking really, really fast, and so when I was talking to Josh really briefly about tonight's message, he just said, just make sure you don't talk as fast. So I'm trying to slow myself down. If I'm talking too fast, maybe just someone give me a wave. No, I won't miss that. Okay, you guys can. Okay, perfect. So yes, I've heard that your theme for this evening is, for the term is Who is God to You? And my 2 cents in that, or my 2 thoughts on that is, I think it's beautiful because it speaks to the fact that He is a personal God, and often our relationship looks different from person, like with Him looks different from person to person. Like the way I relate to God probably is going to be different to the way Ash relates to God, or Zoe relates to God, or Dev relates to God. I'm just picking on people that I know the names of. And so I thought that I would start by sharing a short story with you that is personal about me and my experience with God in the last few months. So long story short, my family moved down to the valley from Narre Warren, which is a suburb in the southeastern suburbs, yeah. And they've been living here for about 4 years, maybe a bit longer. And for me, I was always eager to move back to Melbourne because I hate the shopping here. And I just really like Melbourne a lot, but it wasn't meant to be for a good 4 years. And then over the past probably 4 months, I have been moved out, but that process wasn't a short process in that I had obviously been wanting to move for years and years and years. God finally said, I think, yeah, that's a go. However, it wasn't just an inkling or a feeling. I had to speak to some trusted others who prayed for me, who fasted with me. I had to go on an evaluation process. I spoke to my parents. I spoke to Alex. I spoke to a good lot of people who could help me navigate that. And so, yeah, obviously, this was a really exciting process for me. In that I was really looking forward to, like I said, good shopping again, really nice food. You guys, your takeaway places shut so early around here. Like, what do you do if, Shell's nodding, like, what do you do when you're wanting to hang out with your friends? It's like maybe a little bit past midnight. Like, there's nowhere to go, you know? It sucks. And so, anyways, that's another really good thing that I love about Melbourne is places open so late. So there was this long list of benefits for me in moving, but there was also the scary flip side of that in that I had never moved out of home before, and so moving out meant leaving my family. It also meant leaving my partner. It looked like having to budget, which I didn't really like. It looked like, yeah. It looked like this long list of things that were really scary for me, and I also felt a little bit anxious, I would say, because it also meant leaving my job and then finding a new workplace and then finding new friends and just the whole ordeal that comes with that. And so, anyways, I had moved. I was facing these fears or these anxieties, as you could say. However, nothing could prepare me for the first 4 weeks of life when I moved out of home. So my car was a really reliable car up until I moved. It was on the first week of moving, I had some issues with my brakes, and it was pretty bad. Like if I put my foot down on the brake, it would like scrape. You could hear it, and so I was like, probably should get that fixed. And so I spoke to Dad. He said, yeah, you need to come bring the car down. We need to replace your brake pads. I was like, cool. So I did that. And then the following week, this is no word of lie. I can't exaggerate this story. Genuinely, the next week, something else felt a little bit wrong. And this time I felt something was wrong with my tyres. And so I explained, this is what I'm feeling. This what I'm feeling when I'm driving. And so, yeah, Dad said, yeah, bring your car back down the following week. We'll have a look. So I did that. And as he looked, he realised that my tyres were like bald, but not just one of them, like all four. And so I was like, okay, that's a lot of money. And on the money front, I had only budgeted for first month's rent, not rent plus bond, plus bills, plus food, plus car. So I was a bit stressed on that. And so it took me 2 weeks to pay off my tyres. Like I did 1 week, 2 the following week. And then the week after I had replaced my tyres, I was driving. So I have 2 jobs. And so I'd finished work at one job and I was going to the second job. And on my way there, I make a stop in Narre Warren to pick up stuff to take to the job. Anyway, when I was driving there, I felt like something was off again. And so I stopped my car and I like got out of my car and I could smell this really yucky, burning, bad smell. And so I got out of my car and I like went and looked like where my tires are because it's like been problems around that area. And so I touched my rims and they were burning hot, like it sizzled my finger. And yeah, so I could smell something and it sizzled my finger. And so then I called Dad and I said, look, this is what's going on. This is what I can smell. This is what's happening. And so he said, okay, you're going to need to bring that car back, but you shouldn't really drive it. So I had to get my car from here back to home. Then I had to somehow get to work for the whole week. And then I somehow had to get my car from Clayton to Moe South. So I remember sitting in my car. I got back, I finished the phone call and I sat in my car, and this is embarrassing, but I just sat and I cried. Like I bawled my eyes out because I was like, this is not it. Like moving out of home was meant to be really fun and I was meant to just go out, hang out with friends and, work a little bit, and then that was all good. But this is my life and it's stressful and it's not fun. And I was thinking, like in my head, I was like, in tension with God, because I was like, I feel like I was doing what you asked me to do. You said yes to move, but this is what's happening. How is that fair? How is that right? And so maybe you hear my story and you think, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not like Alicia. I'm so glad I don't have tension. I'm so glad that, God doesn't ask me to do these crazy things and then leave me in the dirt. That's really great. While others of us may hear my story and you probably may resonate with how I was feeling, in that God may have asked you to do something and you were walking in obedience and something happened or a tension came up and you were left feeling like, what the heck, God? Like that's not what was supposed to happen. And so if that's the case for you, that's like my well-worded question. I thought, what am I doing? Wait, doesn't matter. You can read it for yourself. We're going to move on into the Bible, and his name, we're looking at the story of Abraham, and so we're looking in Genesis 22. And so this guy, Abraham, he also was faced with a situation where God had asked him to do something really crazy, and probably was left feeling a little bit like you and I when things don't quite go as planned. And so a little bit of a backstory. Abraham was married to his wife, Sarah, and they were actually unable to have kids, so they couldn't conceive a child. And then one day, these men were in town, and God gave them word to tell Abraham and Sarah that he was going to bless them with a kid. And so we're fast forwarding. They did fall pregnant and have a baby. They named him Isaac, and so here we are. So Genesis 22, 1-7. Bear with me, I didn't write the scripture down. Okay, so it starts off by saying, which you can, if you have your Bibles, open them up, otherwise you can follow on the screen. But it says, sometime later, God tested Abraham's faith. Abraham, God called. Yes, he replied, here I am. Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Go and sacrifice him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will show you. The next morning, Abraham got up, he saddled his donkey, and he took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood for a fire for a burnt offering and set out for the place that God had told him about. On the 3rd day of their journey, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Stay here with the donkey, Abraham told the servants. The boy and I will travel a little bit further. We will worship there and then we'll come right back. So Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "We have fire and we have wood," the boy said, "but where is the sheep for the burnt offering?" So, firstly, we see that Abraham received instruction from God. And so he was saying, sorry, I should move the microphone away from my mouth. He was saying that you need to take your son, your only son, and you actually need to give him up as a sacrifice. And so this is insane because essentially what's happening here is God was saying, hey, you know the thing that you longed for forever and ever and ever and ever, and I finally blessed you with, I'm actually going to need to take that back. And then we see that Abraham's response to that was with no delay. Like he got up the very next morning and he set off on the journey. And so I think that is crazy. Like, I don't know about you, but if that was me and God had said, hey, I need you to offer up your son as a sacrifice, I wouldn't have been getting up the next morning. I would have said, okay, God, that's nice. I'm just going to need a couple weeks though, because I'm going to have to consult with some of my girlfriends. I'm probably going to have to give myself some time to think and process, weigh up the pros and cons. Probably have to prep funeral arrangements. I would have probably gone on the big spiral of like, yeah, I'll do it, but I just need a bit of time because there's a lot that I need to sort out in the meantime. Plus, I have to somehow work out how I'm going to break the news to my son that actually I have to kill you. Like, that's insane. But Abraham, he was so obedient that he got up the next morning, and I would say that he was obedient and faithful, and like he did it, he was obedient with faith because he didn't even really know where he was going to go. God says, you're going to take him up to a mountain that I'm going to show you. But there was no instruction manual. It wasn't, hey, you're going to travel for 6Ks and you're going to turn left and you're going to go up a little bit more and then you'll see the place. No, it was, you're going to take him to a mountain that I will show you. We also see that it wasn't just that he was obedient straight away or he didn't delay in his obedience, but we also see that he put in the hard work and effort that was also associated with being obedient. Because he didn't just get up and go, but he also had to get up, he had to prepare himself, he had to get a donkey, he had to get his servants ready, he had to get his son ready. It says that he also had to get firewood. And then it says, on the third day of their journey, on the third day of their journey, he had to sacrifice his son, he had to get up, he had to get all these things ready, and then he had to travel 3 days before he even saw the place that God had said to go. That should challenge both myself and you. And so, I guess that brings us to our first main point for this evening, and that is obedience does not equal ease. Obedience doesn't always equal ease. We see that in Abraham's story, you saw that in my story, and I'm sure in the lives of many of those around you who, if they're walking in obedience, it doesn't always look easy, it doesn't always look appealing, it doesn't always look fun. And so, what does that mean for you and I tonight? I would say that if we gave God the microphone to speak into our lives, that he would probably have something to say. Maybe it would be, hey, I actually need you to get up 15 to 20 minutes earlier in the morning so that you can spend time with me in my word, because I actually want to meet with you. Or something like, hey, I know that that person did you wrong, but maybe your response wasn't so great, so I want you to actually go and apologize first, even if it hurts your pride or you didn't feel like you were in the wrong. Or maybe it's something like, do you want to help your mum out with some chores around the house? Because she's actually stressed at the moment and this would relieve some tension for her. Maybe it's as simple as putting a little bit more effort into studies so that he could be honoured and esteemed in that place. I don't know what it is personally for you, but I do know that obedience doesn't always look appealing, but we do it because he's not only worthy, but he's also trustworthy in that space. And so we have the capacity to be like Abraham and not delay in our responses to obedience to God. Moving on, Genesis 22, 8 to 14. Oh my gosh. Okay, It says, God will provide. This is picking up from Isaac's question, which I think is so ironic because Isaac's asking where the sacrifice is. Like, so you're the sacrifice. Like, how does he tell him that? Anyway, so he says, God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son. Abraham answers. And they both walked on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. He then tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as a sacrifice. At that moment, the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Abraham replied, here I am. Don't lay a hand on the boy, the angel said. Do not hurt him in any way, for I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its thorns in the thicket. I had to practice that line like 10 times. It's a bit of a tongue twister. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering in place of his son. Abraham named the place Yahweh Jireh, which we know as Jehovah Jireh, which means Lord will provide. On this day, people still use that name as a proverb, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. And so here we see that we see that Abraham carried out God's instruction right down to the last moment. Like he had done it. He was literally just about to kill his son. And then we see that God sends an angel to intervene. But not only does the angel intervene, he actually recognizes what Abraham was doing and he honors him for giving up his son. Like he says, I don't want to stuff up the wording, but you've not withheld from me even your son, your only son. Like if there was anything that you had the right to not give up for me, that probably would have been it. Yet you chose to be obedient to me even in that. And so we see that, Abraham was honored and encouraged by God through an angel, which is so beautiful. And then not only that, we also see that God blessed him as a result. He looked up and he saw that there was a ram in the thicket that he could use in place for his son. And so we see that Abraham was obedient even when he didn't really understand the why. And that was because he knew that God was worthy and trustworthy, as I touched on before. And so that brings us to our second main point, being that God honors our obedience. God honors our obedience. And so what does that mean for you and I? I feel like the thing that came to mind when I was actually thinking, what does that actually mean for me, God? Like, yes, I'm obedient, and yes, I don't want to delay, but when you honor me, that's crazy. Like the God of the universe, like he would speak his encouragement, his honor, and his favor to me. Like I feel like that should just be enough in and of itself, right? Regardless of if he was going to provide a way out or something else to add on. But if you would speak your encouragement to me, that seems like it should be enough. And so, I feel like that concept of I could only dream of God to be proud of me. I could only dream of God to honor me. I could only dream of God to speak his encouragement and life into me. So that motivates me to want to be obedient. And we often use the phrase that obedience is God's love language, in that, like, we could do anything here on earth, but if we're obedient to him, that must bless his Father heart. Like, my kids are being obedient to me. So I want to move on to Genesis 22, 15 to 22, which will take us into our last main point. And so it says, the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven. This is what the Lord says. Because you have obeyed me and not withheld even your son, your only son, I swear by my own name that I will certainly bless you. I will multiply your descendants beyond number, like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will conquer the cities of their enemies, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me. Then they returned to the servants and they traveled back to Beersheba, where Abraham continued to live. Soon after this, Abraham heard that his brother's wife essentially had children. There was 8 of them, and then it goes on to speak of another. His brother also had another 4 kids through his concubine. I don't know if that's how you say it, but yeah. Anyway, so looking at that part of the scripture, we see that God provided for Abraham. He didn't just provide the ram, like we looked at the very first point, in the second point, but we also see that he went above and beyond in that he gave him a son and he multiplied his descendants beyond number. Like, what does that even mean? Like, that's crazy. And not only that, but he says that they'll go on to conquer cities and their enemies, which means they'll actually be a prosperous and fruitful people, right? And then it says all the nations will be blessed through them. And so why did God do this for Abraham? I think it's in verse 18. It says, all because you have obeyed me. All because you have obeyed me. God saw, he honored, and he provided. And we see through this that he didn't just provide a little, but he actually went above and beyond. And so that helps us understand that our God, he's not a stingy God, And so I do wonder, what are the what ifs behind if Abraham wasn't obedient? Like, would his son have been taken away another way? Would his bloodline have stopped there? Like, we can only go on and imagine all the what ifs or all the, the repercussions of not being obedient. But we get to see through Abraham and the example that he set what God can do. And so brings us to our third main point, being that God is always faithful to provide, and that is to provide above and beyond. And so I would dare say that Abraham's obedience determined his blessings. Abraham's obedience determined his blessings. And as well as that, God got to be revealed as provider because Abraham needed him to provide. And so the idea that we actually can't, God can't be who we don't allow him to be in our lives. Like, if you've got it all sorted out, then he actually can't be your savior. If you've saved up all your money and you've got life all sorted, then he can't be your provider. But God can only be who we allow him to be. And so Abraham not only got his descendants multiplied and a ram in place of his son, but he actually got to understand a new facet or a new part of God or a new character of God, which I think is in and of itself so beautiful and probably one of the most precious gifts that you and I could ever want to receive. Like, I want to know more of who you are. I want to know what, your character looks like. And so I want to ask the question again, what does that mean for us? And I would say that it means that we can have steadfast hope that he will provide above and beyond our wildest dreams. He will exceed our expectations when we're obedient. Yes, it might cause tension. Yes, it might not be hard. Yes, it might not look pretty. But I fully believe that just like he did for Abraham, he will also do for us, in that he will provide and he will exceed our expectations above and beyond what we could ever pray for or even think to ask or imagine. And so that brings our 3 points for this evening are obedience doesn't equal ease. God honors our obedience and God is always faithful to provide. And in brackets, but it didn't fit, would be that he provides above and beyond. And so I want to quickly take you back to the story that I was telling you at the beginning about my car. So I had left you off in that I was sitting in my car and I was crying. And I would say that part of the reason I was so upset was not just because my car was causing me troubles, but I was so exhausted and I was so worn out in that I was getting used to a new schedule. I was having to meet new people. If I'm very honest, I feel like I was probably struggling a little bit with anxiety, transitioning into a new place, a new job, a new whatever. I was also struggling a little bit financially at that time. And I was so unsure on what I was going to do for the following week because I needed to work, because I needed to make money, because I needed to be able to pay my rent and everything that was associated with that. So I was really stressed and really overwhelmed. I feel like I was missing my family a lot. I was missing Alex a lot. Yes, I feel like in that moment I was like, okay, it's all hitting me. But for me, what happened is I got on Facebook and I messaged a group of my girlfriends and I said, hey, this is a situation, I really need prayer. And so one of them immediately texted me saying, hey, no worries, Liz, you can use my car for the week. Another friend who wasn't aware of the situation had it upon their heart to buy me groceries for the week. My dad had it in his heart that he wanted to pay for something that needed to be fixed on the car. So I guess like in the midst of this tension and this like frustration and this like overwhelmed, situation, I also was receiving a lot of blessings. And so anyways, I still had to get my car from Narre to my house in Clayton. And so I did that trip very slowly. It was along the freeway. Some people would hate me. And I remember as soon as I got off the freeway, I stopped and I parked my car and I waited there for everything to cool down. And then I started my car again and then I drove the rest of the way home. And so then I didn't use my car for the week. I used my friend's car. And then to get my car from Clayton to Moe, I said, okay, this trip's going to probably take, so it's normally about, an hour 20? An hour and a half, yeah. I was like, it's probably going to take about 4 hours because I'm probably going to have to stop like 3 times. So I left Clayton. I was like, I'm just going to gun it until I get to Officer. Then I'll stop. I'll wait an hour. I'll get some food. And I will go from Officer to Longwarry, then Longwarry to home, right? To my parents' house. And so I did that. And then when I pulled up and I got out of the car, Dad rushed over and he came and had a look at the things that I was saying were wrong. And he had a good look for maybe 20 minutes, half an hour, and he just comes up to me and he goes, darling, there's actually nothing wrong. The smell that you were smelling is from the new brake pads that I put on your car 2 weeks ago. And I don't even know what the other thing it was hot. The rims were hot. I thought surely that's not right, but it was explained to me that that's normal. And I probably shouldn't have touched it when I had just finished driving. So anyways, that whole week was like kind of a waste. Like I didn't need to be stressed and I didn't need to use my friend's car, but I just remember feeling so relieved and being like, thank you so much, God, that not another thing has gone wrong because I don't think I could have dealt with it. And so I didn't really care that I wasted a week. I didn't really care that my drive took 4 hours. I was just so relieved and thankful that that was it. And like I said to you before, I feel like it wasn't just my car situation, but I also was feeling quite anxious. Like I would get the shakes when I was on my way to work, which is not something I have ever experienced before. I was feeling alone, like very alone. And so I was trying to relate to God as my safety, my security as well in that time. And I say that and I explain that to you so that you can see and understand in my story as well. My obedience wasn't just staying out late with my friends and going into a cool new job, but it was hard and it wasn't easy. But even in that, I feel like I got to experience what it looked like to be provided for above and beyond. Because not only did my car turn out fine, not only did people bless me with groceries and a car to use, I feel like I was also provided a deeper intimacy with God because it forced me to be so dependent and lenient on Him. It also allowed me to, I guess, have deeper relationships with the people that I was doing life with because I had to trust them with this stuff and be really honest and vulnerable and saying, I don't have it together and I need prayer and I need help. And so, and I also was blessed financially as well. Like my dad came through for me, my friend came through for me, and my 2 jobs, I sit comfortably enough that I'm actually able to go and bless others as well. And so, I would say that was my experience hard? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because similarly to Abraham, I got to experience God as my provider, as my Jehovah Jireh. So I got to understand what that meant for me personally. And so this evening, before we finish up, I wanted to give us a reflection time. And so if we can get some like music playing in the background, that'll be amazing. But finding your own space in the room, I'd love us to sit down and just sit with God and ask Him the question of what do you need me to do in obedience which will result in your blessings? What is it that I personally need to do to be obedient to you, which in turn will result in blessing, whether that looks like He's going to land money in your lap or if it is just understanding Him a little bit deeper. And then if there's time, we can share in groups of 2 to 3. And I'd love it if we could pray over one another as well. So yeah, thanks so much for letting me talk to you for this little while. I don't know how I went for time, but anyway.